never going to forget the sacrifices you made because you love our country.
Hi, I'm Tony Lyons, and I'm president of MAHA Action, and this is our sixth MAHA Media Hub. And I want to welcome you all. We have something like 2,500 people coming on, and the speakers today represent something like 100 million followers, and the 2,500 people have something like 200 million other followers. So we think we can have a really broad reach, and we need it now more than we ever have, because I think we're really winning this battle. And what's happening now is that the hit pieces are just starting to fly like crazy. And they're going to come after us this fall in every way they can, because there are billions of dollars at stake here. People are going to lose a lot of money because they've been making a lot of money by making Americans sick. So we're at war here, and we need to fight back, and it's working. And I'm grateful that all of you are here. And I'm just going to say one thing before we get started, and that is that Secretary Kennedy just posted this to his ex, and that is that he says, "I promised four things: to end COVID vaccine mandates, to keep vaccines available to people who want them, especially the vulnerable, to demand placebo-controlled trials from companies, to end the emergency." In a series of FDA actions today, we accomplished all four goals. The emergency use authorizations for COVID vaccines, once used to justify broad mandates to the general public during the Biden administration, are now rescinded. The FDA has issued marketing authorization for those at higher risk. These vaccines are available for all patients who choose them after consulting with their doctors. The American people demanded science and common sense. This framework delivers all three. Thank you, Dr. McCarry, for your leadership. So it's a big win today. We're having a lot of big wins, and I'm really just grateful that you're all here, that you're all helping, and that you're all part of this war, this movement that's growing every day. We are waiting now for Dr. Oz. He's supposed to be on in 1 minute. But each of the people coming on today are going to tell you about the things that they're really focused on. And while we're all focused on different things, there are a bunch of things that really tie us together, that we're all trying to fight all of these different delivery mechanisms for toxins. And we're trying to protect the health of 300 million people. And we can only do that effectively if we stay together. And if we make sure that we fight back when they're hit pieces, when people attack Bobby Kennedy, when they go after Dr. Oz, that this is a time for us really to stick together. But that doesn't mean that we have to speak with one voice. I mean, we can disagree all the time. That's one of the main things that Bobby Kennedy has been fighting for all along, that I've been fighting for personally, that we can disagree about all kinds of things, but we're also on the same team. It's a big tent, and we're all going to work together. And here is Dr. Oz. Welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you very much. It is a great honor. This program gets larger and larger, approaching network television metrics next. Congratulations, Tony. It has been a great honor to be a part of this movement. I must say it's mostly my wife's fault. And I say that because many years ago, when I was a practicing surgeon, a young practicing surgeon at Columbia, she kept on saying, you tell me these stories about patients who they'd known a little bit more about how their body worked. They could have avoided the need for you to do heart surgery on them. That was my profession. And I thought about it. I realized that so much of what I was doing was reparative, but it was basically a man-made imitation of what God had given these folks. New blood vessels on their hearts in a bypass operation, fixing calcifications that were often caused by lifestyle decisions they'd made. Examples are smoking, which tends to result in scarring of arteries that your body heals by scarring in them with calcium. And After enough haranguing from Lisa and recognizing that in her own family they had a very strong MAHA approach to life. It wasn't called MAHA back then, but it was a belief that eating real food that comes out of the ground, looking the way it looks when you eat it, is better for you. Being suspect of processed meals is wise. Pushing back a little bit on orthodoxy, on recommendations that you might be getting on medications or treatments was probably thoughtful because there were sometimes ulterior interests, alternative perspectives that are equally viable. And putting it all together, we began to realize that there was actually an opportunity to do something called complementary medicine. Now, it was originally called alternative medicine, but we made the argument, at least at Columbia University, where I was practicing, that it's not really alternative to medicine, because if it's medicine, it's medicine. It's just additive to traditional medicine, the kinds of medicines that that we were taught in medical school. And Bobby had a post today that I retweeted, and I wanted to, because what he was speaking about was bringing health education into medical school. And I actually, when I was in medical school, ran for class president and eventually student body president. And my platform was the need to bring nutrition into the medical school. And when I won, we actually instituted a nutrition class at Penn, where I was in med school, and I thought I benefited personally, but I think my classmates did as well, because if you don't learn something in medical school, then you don't think it's real. You don't think it matters, because if it was important, you would have been taught it. It's almost like a religious experience. You know, if you're not taught it in the seminary, how important could it be to the gospel? And now we know that this is unfortunately a reality around the country, that many medical schools, if they did have nutrition classes, just poo-pooed them, or they put an hour or two on the curriculum just to say they had it, but they don't really actually have the kinds of culinary nutrition that we should be teaching. And by culinary nutrition, I mean that you actually understand what it takes to make foods that have nutrition in them. And I'll give you a concrete example. I can speak about the importance of lycopene as an antioxidant to your well-being. Turns out lycopene is found in tomatoes. So you might say, well, okay, I'll eat tomatoes. Well, you don't really get that much lycopene out of a tomato if you eat it, unless you do a couple things. One of them is to heat it, or heat the tomato. It releases the lycopene, and it's best taken with some fat. So you can put a little fat with the heated tomato. That's called pasta sauce. And that's why pasta sauce is a superb source of lycopene, far better than raw tomatoes. But again, if you don't teach that to students, and you don't make it accessible to the patients, they're not going to talk about it in the office, and they're definitely not going to be taking it home and incorporating it into their lifestyle. So that was my basic introduction to the process. Of course, years later, and we would talk about it on the show consistently and continually, because you win the battle for health in your kitchen, in your living room, in your bedroom. That is a fundamental reality of how we avoid chronic disease. Now, my job today is administering Medicare and Medicaid, the health insurance programs and the public health insurance programs for the country. And Secretary Kennedy, who's just above me, a couple floors up, we're in Washington at the in the Humphreys building. His main push is to make sure that we all recognize that no matter what we're doing, there's an element of what we're doing that would be made better if America was healthier. So in my case, I've got to deploy about $1.7 trillion of money to pay for people who are being treated for medical illnesses that were often created by lifestyle choices. It's a little scary when you think that we could have that much money. It's twice the amount of money we spent for the defense of the country. That much money spent just on Medicare and Medicaid because we have chronic illness at the rates we're tolerating. So the obesity numbers, which I won't go through all the details, but the obesity is 43% of the US public. That's more than twice Europe. It's 10 times Japan. And of course, if you've got 10 times the incidence of obesity and the related problems like diabetes and hypertension and stroke and heart disease, kidney failure that result from that, you're going to be more expensive as a population to take care of. So we are more than twice as expensive as any other country on the planet when it comes to our health conditions, and yet our life expectancy is 5 years shorter than our comparable countries in Europe. We used to be equal when I was in medical school, but we've fallen behind because our chronic illness numbers have gone up. So what Secretary Kennedy wants to do, what the MAHA movement is about, is pushing back on some of these trends that have caught us by surprise. So let me leave the podium by giving you what I think is the best definition. And although it's embodied by Secretary Kennedy and others who are on this call, to me, MAHA is primarily about being curious. And if you're curious, and you actually ask real questions, acknowledging that 80% of questions are statements in disguise. So most of us in our day-to-day conversations with our friends even are really telling them things in the form of questions. So if you really are curious, you'll ask real questions about things that matter, and you have to be courageous enough to share what you learn with others. And that's the part that often got dicey because you'll realize something and you don't want to talk about it publicly because you know you're going to offend a lot of people. I think the MAHA movement is about us double checking a lot of the work that's been done already that was taken as gospel, as settled science, as it's often called. Now, there's no settled science. And if you're a true scientist, you're always asking questions, you're always kicking the tires, you're always double checking. But forget about being a scientist. If you're a parent, if you love the people around you, you're going to double check. It's not that you're dubious that what you're being told is right. It's not that they're lying to you and you're accusing them through your questions. It's much simpler to me. If you're a father and you love your child, which of course you do, you're going to go ask a couple extra questions. Are you 100% positive the kid needs that? What are the alternatives? Can we go back one more time and revisit that assumption that you made when you said what you said? And that's actually how you make sure the system works. Because if people don't believe what they're being told, they will eventually get upset about it. And then I liken it to an abscess. If you don't let the infection drain, it just builds up. It doesn't go away. It builds up and gets more painful until finally it'll either lance itself or you're going to cut it. And the MAHA movement is a deft surgical treatment of an infection. And the best way to treat an infection is to expose it to the outside world. Expose it to light, expose it to oxygen, and the body will heal. And I think the MAHA movement, at its best, does that. It allows stuff that we never really questioned enough to get pushed away, stuff that we should believe to become more robustly embraced, but also allow us, because we're asking difficult questions and being brave enough, courageous enough to address those issues. And if you do it with a little bit of compassion, you'll actually get people to understand why you're doing what you're doing. And I'm phrasing it in this way because after enough discussions with folks who've been inherently resistant, certainly within organized medicine, you realize most of them would sort of, if you explain it that way, they'll go along for the ride. And for right now, that's where we need to be as we get more and more data to support some of the assumptions that have been out there and get more truth entering into the bloodstream of the medical community. So let me leave it at that and hand you to a very talented speaker, someone I've gotten to know, who's both through his podcast, but also in person. Got a lot of wisdom about different parts of how the body works, but also how the entire ecosystem is functional. So, Tony, if it's okay, I'll hand it off to Gary Brecka.
Sounds great.
Well, thank you very much. I'll just make my comments brief. I just wanted to share with you guys that the message that we are getting out is really resonating. I want to pick up where Dr. Oz left off. I believe that, I was a population mortality expert for 20 years. And we did research on mortality and essentially what was preventing human beings from living longer, healthier, happier, more fulfilling lives. And it's likely not what you think. It wasn't the absence of chemicals or synthetics or pharmaceuticals. It was the category that we called modifiable risk factors. And I believe that the MAHA movement is about modifiable risk factors. These are risk factors that can be modified. And the MAHA movement is doing that. I wanted to just encourage all of you to continue to be a voice for us. It is resonating now at a political level. I mean, politicians, as I mentioned on the last call, are starting to realize that this is a political hot potato, being on the opposite side of this movement. I met this week with the Governor Youngkin from the state of Virginia. I met with the governor of Tennessee. It was actually the first time that the Tennessee and Virginia governors have been in the same room in 30 years. And this message was top of our conversation. And we talked specifically about the House Appropriations Bill, Section 453, this broad chemical immunity. I've been trying to parrot that message as much as I can. I was on a Fox News interview not too long ago, about 3 weeks ago. It's now topped 109 million views. So this is content that consumers are viscerally connected to on both sides of the aisle, right? Nobody is for childhood cancer, rising rates of obesity, chronic disease. But what I've also noticed that Tony warned about at the beginning of this call is that now when we were not a movement and we were not effective, if you will, when we were sort of messaging independently, not a lot of big media paid attention to us. Now they're paying attention. And they are not only coming for Bobby, they're coming for those of us that support the movement. I just took a quick perusal of some of the articles in the New York Times, Bloomberg, the Atlantic, reframing our message in really sinister ways, talking about how the proposed MAHA boxes, which are fresh, healthy foods that are going to be shipped to low-income children, raise serious concerns about spoilage and capacity to be delivered. How the MAHA grocery trend is about to backfire because we're doing pseudoscience swaps of seed oils for things like grass-fed beef tallow. And then there was another one in the progress report about how Secretary Kennedy's agenda and the people involved in his agenda are creating dangerous and alarming trends because they are not, they're weakening the COVID vaccine recommendations. Forget COVID vaccine science, forget actually validating that they're safe or effective, but actually the fact that we're not recommending them raises serious concerns and is the new public health crisis. So just be prepared for that and just know that you are on the side of right when they rise up against you. There's a hit piece underway on me and the MAHA movement coming out in Bloomberg. I expect it to be very well written and use a lot of word salad to get around the topic that they're trying to avoid, which is the chronic disease pandemic in this country. But on the opposite side of that, Bloomberg would give his left arm to have 109 million views on a single video, and that was supporting our opposal of the legislation that's going to give broad immunity to chemical companies. So this is something that I've personally very committed to. I know there's so many warriors on this call right now. I just want to encourage all of you to do one thing after this call. There'll be a letter going out to all of you after this call. And in that letter, there'll be some assets that you can use and you can repost about the legislative wins, about the MAHA agenda, about the big wins on defunding some of the support for COVID-19 vaccines, about the legislative wins we're having in the SNAP program, the legislative wins we're having not just with petroleum-based food dyes, but getting exercise and fitness back into the public school system. So this is the side of right. I would encourage every single one of you, please, if you do only one thing, take one action today, it would be to take the assets that are in that letter and just repost them. We're trying to do it, make these assets in a way that speak to truth, that are well cited, that are unassailable, so they will not put you in a risky position. They will not compromise your reputation. But the more of us that are doing this messaging around the media, the better this message will land. And it will land in the hearts of politicians that are seeking re-election. And that's how we keep control of this movement and continue to grow it. And with that, I will secede to the next speaker.
Gary, that was really great. It's always great to have you on these calls, and I hope you'll keep coming.
Blessing, just a blessing to be here, man.
So next we're going to go to Russell Brand. Russell, always amazing to see you.
It's lovely to see you, Tony. Thank you for organising this. I really enjoyed what Gary was saying there, Tony, and everyone. And it's always a joy to see Dr. Oz. What I was mostly struck by there is the significance of media messaging, which I suppose is pretty pivotal and central to what we're doing here. That we can assume that there will be negative messaging around many of the ideas that are being discussed on this call, whether it's sort of beef tallow as an alternative to seed oils or healthy, locally grown food as opposed to mass-produced toxin. Tony drew my attention to some of the ideas around agriculture that we should be discussing that are, of course, of global significance. Indeed, one of the moments that I started to pay attention to the global and imperial nature of this, it's not a cold plunge, it's actually a hot bath. If you want, I will, if enough of you make generous contributions to this movement, I'll travel straight from this bath to a cold plunge. And I tell you, one time I did a cold plunge with Dr. Oz and Bobby. I've done cold plunges with Gary Brecker. I feel like I can take Gary Brecker in a cold plunge situation all day long. That guy at around 38 degrees heat up now. Gary Brecker's a badass, man. He went on a sort of a 7 marathons in 7 days trip with his son in different continents. It made me realize, wow, that guy is serious, man. Anyway, the point I wanted to make here was, yeah, I'll get in a cold plunge. I'll get in a cold plunge if that's what you want me to do. I'll come back on the end of the call, and I won't be nearly so cogent if this is even remotely cogent now. But when there were agricultural protests in India and in Sri Lanka and in the Netherlands and Germany and my country and your country simultaneously, it became clear there was a global component to this. When it comes to the messaging of the media, when it comes to control of our food, control of our consciousness, control of our lives, we have to be so alert to the type of messages and type of information that we default to, certainly before doing anything as ridiculous as believing it. I was reminded today that both Australia and Canada built internment camps during the COVID pandemic. When I saw the stories again, I thought, yeah, I kind of remember that, but I'd almost forgotten. And I'm a person that spends a lot of time analysing and critiquing media messaging. I'm a person that's been personally subject of simultaneously dropped stories and character attacks and what seemed like alliance between various media groups and online entities and some weird stuff. And even I had forgotten that during the pandemic, they built internment camps in Australia and Canada, then denied it, and then tried to claim it never happened. Watch, I think, very carefully what's happening around agriculture. Watch any groups that are granted indemnity around anything. It seems that it's an identifiable play that means that what's coming down the pipe is massive corruption. I'm sending you guys a lot of love, and I see this. Listen, by the way, if you want to eliminate joy and spirit from activism, joy and spirit are fundamental to activism. Remember this: without spirit, without joy, without connection, we don't have anything to protect anyway. So whilst I recognize somberness and seriousness and propriety have their place, that place isn't on a Zoom call. It's just a Zoom call. Take it easy. Praise the Lord.
Thanks so much, Russell. Russell Brand is available 24/7 to fight for MAHA, whatever he's doing. You can see that here. Next up, we have Bonnie Hari. Thanks so much for coming on. You've been doing just incredible work for MAHA, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tony. Thank you everyone for being here today. I'm so excited to just be able to share what's been going on lately on the food front and everything Secretary Kennedy and his team have accomplished in creating this incredible atmosphere to not only encourage food companies to act on their own, but states as well. Today, an historic legislation was signed in Texas. Secretary Kennedy was there with Governor Abbott. I couldn't be there today, unfortunately, but we had a lot of other freedom fighters there, which was great. And he signed 3 pieces of legislation that were fundamental in basically providing the blueprint for how states can make themselves healthy again. Probably one of the most comprehensive bills on food chemicals, including 40 different chemicals that would require a warning label now in Texas. Of course, the food industry is going to try to fight this and, sue Texas and try to get out of this mandate. But with the momentum of MAHA, with our continued support, I think we can continue to show our support there and hopefully make it impossible for the food industry to do anything that would prevent this legislation from taking place. There are certain chemicals in that legislation that are banned in other countries, that are not used in other countries, that are prohibited for, because it causes asthmatic symptoms in workers that use it. You get fined $450,000 and put in prison in Singapore if you use some of these chemicals. So there's all kinds of different chemicals, not just artificial food dyes, but things that affect fertility, things that affect our cancer rates, like titanium dioxide and azodicarbonamide, a chemical that used to be in Subway yoga mats. Other chemicals that are linked to endocrine disrupting properties that are in so many products that kids consume, BHA and BHT. And so these are really important actions. And I think what's important to recognize is that when we're supporting these state actions and we make sure that they get passed, we are giving political cover for Secretary Kennedy to do more widespread federal action. And that has been what has happened in the case of artificial food dyes, where he asked voluntarily for the food companies to remove artificial food dyes. 40% of food companies have now made the commitment. I think it's actually a little bit more than that now. And they are going to have to comply because of the different state actions that are happening. You have, West Virginia, who just, banned artificial food dyes in the state of West Virginia. So companies are starting to make their products without artificial food dyes, like Mars and huge giant food companies are starting to make the announcement that they're starting to make different versions. I highly doubt that they would actually make a different version for just one state. They're going to have to roll it out statewide because they can't do e-commerce and other marketing, state by state. It would be too cumbersome for an organization like that. We also have, state legislation happening in schools where they're prohibiting the use of a lot of these chemicals in schools. And so that gives cover for Secretary Kennedy to convince the USDA to make some of these standards federal. So it hits all 50 states. And I think you're going to start to see a lot of the power of his organization start to happen as a result of the statewide action, because the companies themselves and other people are going to be lobbying him, saying we cannot follow 50 different state legislations and 50 different state rules. We need to have a federal action on dyes, on these chemicals, on school lunches. And you're going to start to see that happening. And just last week, you saw artificial dyes officially enter the FDA review process for reviewing the scientific data and revoking the authorization of them and eventually banning them, outright, hopefully, or coming up with some federal standards. So I think there's going to be incredible progress there. You've got a lot of things happening on the food front on the pesticides. There is a rider that is going to be a political fight coming up. We know what Secretary Kennedy thinks about this because of all of his work that he's done with Monsanto and the chemicals. He understands these pesticide companies better than most people. He's read all of the documentation in his law cases and everything that led to the biggest jury, the biggest jury award of $2.3 billion to show that glyphosate causes cancer. And so, we're going to be organized on that fight. There's going to be a bill that's going to enter the House sometime in September, I believe. And so we're going to have to get organized around that. And this is called the Chemical Liability Shield. And it's basically a shield like they did for vaccines, where if you or your family suffers from cancer due to pesticides or herbicides, you cannot sue these companies and they will not be held liable. And so we have to hold these representatives accountable. And this is something that unfortunately is been one of the things that the media has taken hold of to try to cause a rift in the MAHA movement. And you'll see different articles spring about, are MAHA moms going to go against Trump? Or are MAHA, is MAHA factioned? Is MAHA not loyal to, one political party? And I would say the answer to that is we are the most passionate group of people, and we can literally get anything done. And if we stick together and keep moving forward and stay positive on these issues, there's no way that these senators and congresspeople can hide from the MAHA movement. And if we just keep staying loud and focused together and cohesive and not let the media or anybody else, create these narratives, we can actually defeat this liability shield and this chemical rider that they're trying to put into the legislation. So there's going to be more coming up about that and specific actions that I know other leaders that are going to be talking on this call and have talked on this call in the past, have talked about That's going to be happening. We also have several different things happening that's coming up. We've got Dr. Casey Means confirmation hearing that's going to be coming up. We need to be lockstep, ready to cohesively tell her story. I mean, she, to me, is one of the most courageous people that has ever been nominated to be in that position of Surgeon General. You know, I personally know her. I personally witnessed, and I'll tell a quick personal story because we're on this call, and I think it's so important to people to hear the passion I have for this person, because and why I think so strongly about her, and why she would just be an enormous asset to America, and to tell the story and to be the main communicator from the medical standpoint on what's wrong with the medical system, how we can fix it, and how we can get back to more root cause analysis and functional medicine. You know, I want to put this in people's ears because this is going to be coming about very soon, and I want people to be ready. But, you know, when I had the opportunity to meet Casey for the first time back last September, so it's been about a year ago, I'd known about her before and we had talked online and stuff, but I was able to meet her in person at the Senate roundtable that I was able to do a testimony, and Secretary Kennedy was there also, and Dr. Marty McCary and others. But what was so brilliant about what she did that day was, before we gave our testimony, we had to sit in Senator Ron Johnson's office and review our testimony. And he kind of, looked over everybody's and read everything. And, we were really excited about the fact that we were going to be able to go in there and really tell the truth about what's wrong with the healthcare system, what's wrong with the food system, what's wrong with the pharmaceutical system. And there was a moment that he had some apprehension about naming names, about actually naming corporations, naming the people who were poisoning us. And Dr. Casey Means came to bat for us that day. And she made it very clear and just so eloquently convinced Senator Ron Johnson that we should be allowed to go in there and tell the truth, no matter what we came there to do that day. And what that roundtable did was it spearheaded the MAHA movement. Each one of our testimonies went so viral and cohesively put together the plan of action for MAHA that Secretary Kennedy was able to take our voices to the campaign trail and show the evidence, the stats, and everything that was talked about that day in those 4 hours of beautiful, nonpartisan, bipartisan, discussion on how to save humanity, and take those talking points and take them to the campaign trail, to the American people, and to get enough votes for President Trump to win so that he could be in a position of power as a result of all that information. And so it goes back to Casey, who fought for transparency, fought for the truth being told that day. And so I am really excited about her being Surgeon General, and that's going to be coming up soon. And I just know the amount of vitriol and media pushback and industry pushback that's going to happen as a result, because she is going against the status quo, just like Secretary Kennedy did for his nomination. These senators who are in the pockets of big pharma and big food, they're going to be very hard on her. But we are going to have to stay unified to make sure she gets in. And if you guys want more information or anything regarding that, I'm happy to help. But I want to just bring the call to action now, because that's going to be coming up. And I want everybody to know that we have a stellar candidate. We have a candidate that's going to come from a functional medicine background for the first time in history at the U.S. Surgeon General level, and one that isn't bought off by big pharma and big food. And I'm really excited about that. And it's almost like she's the missing puzzle piece to Dr. Oz and Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and Secretary Kennedy and Dr. Marty McCary. It's going to be an incredible team. It's like the Avengers. It's absolutely incredible. Okay, so the last thing I want to leave everybody with is, one of the things that I've been seeing is, again, the media will do anything to try to divide our movement. They are now, I believe, There is a coordinated, funded campaign happening. I want to look into this more. I want to try to find out exactly who's paying for this. But just from the hit pieces that have come after me lately and different things like on John Oliver and others, I mean, I laughed my head off at that thing if anybody saw it. But, this is now a coordinated effort to try to keep us sick and to keep the status quo the same. And they will do anything to diminish what we're doing. They want to keep the chemicals in our food. They want to keep the pharmaceuticals just the way they are. They want to keep the standards and the regulations just like they are. And they want to keep making money off of us being sick. And so what we have to do as a movement is fight back against that. Every time they make it about, Trump or Democrats versus Republicans, the chemical companies win, the food companies win, the pharmaceutical companies win, right? That's what they want. They want us to be infighting. They want us to be caught up in the political nature of it all and fighting interagency and doing all of that so that we lose focus on the bigger goal, which is to change the world, to make America healthy again, to remove the chemicals from our land and our earth and our bodies. And so my wish for everybody here that's listening and that's part of this movement is to stay positive as possible, stay focused on sharing the things that resonate with you, that Secretary Kennedy is sharing on his socials, that Dr. Oz is sharing, that Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and Dr. Marty McCary are working on, and sharing that and being positive and being in this mindset that what they are up against is enormous. And it's bigger than anything we've seen before. And we're going to have to stick together more than anything to us to make any kind of progress. And I think what we saw with the artificial food dyes, which was the low-hanging fruit that we've now, I feel like, have accomplished, what we saw there was enormous. I mean, there was an article that just came out yesterday in the Wall Street Journal that proved how powerful MAHA is, that just Kellogg's alone was docked $75 million in their purchase price to Ferrero when they were just purchased by them because of this political and financial issues that they've had as a result of not removing artificial food dyes and ignoring our campaign when we went to Battle Creek, Michigan, and they told us to get off their lawn, right? We can see the money start to change hands. We can see how it's impacting these food companies financially, and there's a lot at stake. And the companies are seeing this, and now they're reading the Wall Street Journal and they're verifying this. And so they see the threat more than ever, and now they're putting marketing dollars towards stopping this. So the only way we can prevent this from, imploding is to stick together and be one team, on one team, moving forward and sharing the positive message. Thank you so much, Tony.
Bonnie, that was spectacular. Thank you. And thank you for being just sort of the quintessential MAHA warrior. And, all the people on this call, we all have the opportunity to amplify these messages. So, you should take nuggets from what everybody said. And then, as you heard before, you're going to get a letter. It's a follow-up letter each week right after the Zoom call that's going to give you assets to repost. So I hope all of you will do that. We have much more power than the New York Times and Bloomberg, the Wall Street Journal, any of those places. Nobody reads those places anymore. They all sort of amplify each other. But, we can get to hundreds of millions of people and we can really change the status quo. So, thank you all for doing that. And, there are a lot of different ways to change the world. And one way we can do that is through music. So I'd like to introduce you now to Mary Cutter's music, and then she's going to say a few words afterwards. Okay, it looks like it's not starting just yet.
Issue with the file type. Sorry, Tony.
No problem. So let me just say that, in her music, she talks about what's happening in Kentucky. But, it's just like the rest of the world. It's big pharmaceutical companies, big food companies, big ag companies targeting vulnerable people, taking kickbacks, overprescribing, the corruption at every single level, people really prioritizing profits over people. And that's got to stop. And we fight it in every way we can. And Mary Cutter, you're fighting it through music, and we need as much of that as possible. We need to bring people in who don't know what's going on, and get them to be part of this movement, because this is a movement that is not really left or right. As Bobby Kennedy says, there are no Republican or Democratic children. We're all, these are our children, and these are our own lives, and we're all fighting for our own survival. So thank you for doing that through your music, and I hope that it is ready now. Shane, how are we doing?
I don't have it. I'm having an issue with the file type. So let's go ahead and have Mary just talk, and hopefully we can have that ready by the end of your time together.
Man, thank you guys so much for having me. I'll tell you what, y'all, I feel like my cup is getting filled up listening to y'all are warriors. There's really no other word for it. Every single person on this call talk about making a difference, and everyone's in their own lanes, right? I mean, I'm a songwriter. I was born and raised in Kentucky. I live in Nashville now. The last several years, I've been making my bread and butter writing for other artists. But this past year and a half, I've started singing the songs that I was writing. And like I said, I grew up in Kentucky, and I saw firsthand the opioid epidemic, and it was really on my heart to write this song. And obviously you never know how a song is gonna be received, especially a song with such a straightforward message. But I wrote this a couple months ago, and I posted a little snippet online, and it's been a wild ride, especially just even seeing the comment sections. Of course, I've seen with my own eyeballs what the pharmaceutical companies, what Big Pharma did to my hometown and all throughout the state. But I did not realize till I posted The Devil Wore a Lab Coat, my song, how it's so much bigger than Kentucky, so much bigger than, the hills where I grew up. It's literally nationwide. And oh, it looks like you might have it pulled up.
Hey, let's see if we can see this. I pulled it up on Facebook.
Okay, and this clip right here, y'all, this was from a live performance a couple weeks ago out in Sturgis. And
saw firsthand what the opioid epidemic did to my hometown. The truth is, Big Pharma targeted Kentucky. It targeted all of the United States. And this is the story. It was, hey doc, there's a thing in my knee. Been working underground since '83. Doctor said I got you the remedy. It'll kill that pain real quick, trust me. Didn't take long, half the town was on it. Didn't ask questions, no, we just popped them. Doctors getting fat from ranking in kickbacks. It all happened so fast. One man's grave is another man's paycheck. Our ex-men said at our expense. Forget the coal mines, they hit a gold mine. Hooked us on 6 feet of side effects. Like a wolf dressed in sheep's clothes. The devil wore a lab coat. I was told I probably shouldn't.
And so that's the first half of the song, but it really has been wild. Since posting that song, some of the social media platforms did not like it, and actually the song got taken down for a period of time, and that was pretty crazy. I got a message from TikTok saying my account was, if I posted it again, they could take down my account. That was kind of a scary situation. But I'll tell you what, just like you guys, I know that, in all the different lanes of what MAHA is doing, you're calling a spade, and there is information that backs it up. And we just got to keep on, doing the fight.
Thanks so much, Mary. Yes, the censorship, the propaganda has just been so incredibly widespread, but we're winning now. And this is going to be just an incredible time. So really grateful to have you on, grateful for the music that you're spreading, and hope that you'll come back and that you'll keep doing it.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate you guys.
Next up, we have Dr. Eric Berg.
Thanks, Tony. And Mary, I love your music. Great. Thank you for doing what you're doing. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Sure. So I'm going to try to explain one of probably the biggest thing that's going to move the dial on chronic disease within 2 minutes. So I'm going to try to do that right now because.
Hey, Eric, your sound is a little bit low.
Okay. How about now? Is that better?
Much better.
Okay. So I want to talk about probably one of the biggest confusions related to chronic disease, and the word is metabolic health. I want to just really define that because people kind of glaze over, like, what does that mean? Metabolism. So my metabolism is slower. Like, no, metabolic health is where the cells stop receiving energy despite the abundance of fuel in the body. So most of chronic disease is metabolic related, and that has to do with like diabetes, Alzheimer's, fatty liver, where the cell is literally starving for nutrients or fuel in the presence of massive amount of fuel because of insulin resistance. So an average thin person is literally about, they have about 100,000 calories of fat on their body, but they can't use it if they have this metabolic syndrome. So it's kind of like being locked in your house and having all these food trucks around, but you have a huge bolt on your door and you can't get access to the fuel. So this happens like with a diabetic. They can't get fuel to the eyes, so they go blind, or their feet, they get gangrene, or their pancreas or their heart starts failing. So that's really what metabolic disease is. But the question is, where does that come from? What is the thing that creates most metabolic disease? That has to do with the excessive refined carbohydrates. And people, when they think of carbohydrates, they think of sugar. That's true. An average person consumes 31 teaspoons of sugar. That's a lot. But there's something else even bigger than sugar that a lot of people don't know, because they look on the label and they say, oh, carbohydrates, we minus the fiber, we minus the sugar, and then we get this other carbohydrate. They don't even know what that is. That's actually starch. And I'm not talking about like potato starch. I'm talking about probably the worst starch. It's called industrial starch, where it's so refined, there's nothing that you could even resembles the starting of wherever that starch came from. So modified food starch, modified corn starch, maltodextrin. This carbohydrate creates more of a blood sugar spike than actual sugar. It's actually, but it's not classified as a sugar. It's a hidden sugar, because what starch is a bunch of sugar molecules connected together. So if we combine the amount of sugar with the starch together on an average day, you're talking about 87 teaspoons of sugar that an average person consumes in the US. And that's on a 2,000 calorie diet. So I think people are consuming more than 2,000 calories. So it brings it up to probably over 100. And so what happens when they go to the doctor to get their blood sugars tested, and it comes out normal for about 15 years, because you have this massive vacuum that's sucking the sugar out. Because if you take a look at a normal blood sugar, it should be about between 70 and 90, or roughly 80 nanograms per milliliter. And what that means is that basically is 1 teaspoon of sugar tolerance at any given point. That's all that your body will tolerate, is 1 little teaspoon of sugar. So yet an average person's consuming a massive amount. So unfortunately, when you go to the doctor, they don't test insulin, they check blood sugar. So they're not going to pick it up for 15 to 20 years. And by the time they do, it's already too late. So we have this situation where the cells are literally starving. The brain cells, the neurons are just literally dying. And it really has to do with excessive amount of sugar, which actually creates this metabolic syndrome. So out of all the things that are going to move the dial, it's the reduction of the refined carbs. And I just wanted to kind of define what that is. So what we're going to be doing is putting out a lot of great posts on this, so you can repost and share through social media through the next emails that are coming up. But again, when you talk about metabolic health, it kind of glazes over and people don't understand what it is. So hopefully now you kind of get the simplicity of it. So that's my 2-minute talk.
Eric, thanks so much. And thanks for all that you've been doing. You've just been making an incredible posts that help MAHA, and been such a leader for MAHA. And I'm just very grateful. And I want everyone to know that, to follow Dr. Berg, He's just doing spectacular work. Next up, we have Dr. Joseph Witt-Doring to talk about mental health.
Okay. Hi, and I'm just going to jump onto what Eric just said. This issue of insulin resistance, man, it affects mental health. It can lead to Alzheimer's. There's higher rates of that in people who are diagnosed with ADHD. We are talking about neurons who are starving for energy, and it is getting expressed in mental illness. So it has effects all over the body and in the mind. And so, okay, who am I? So I'm Dr. Joseph Witt-Doring. I'm a psychiatrist, and I used to work at the FDA. And I run a nationwide clinic now, actually helping people come off psychiatric medications, as well as doing a lot of advocacy work for mental health reform. And what I'm here to do today is really to introduce MAHA Action to the mental health side of Secretary Kennedy's agenda. And let's start here. Why should you care about this and what we're doing? Well, frankly, it's because mental health care in this country is broken. Right now, it's essentially a conveyor belt of antidepressant prescriptions, most of them written by family medicine doctors who see patients in 5 to 10 minutes and who really don't understand their life and what's going on with them. And so what have the results been? Well, since the early 90s, psychiatric drug use has skyrocketed. That we're using 5 times as many antidepressants as we used to. Yet the suicide rates are higher and higher, and teen suicide is skyrocketing. Disability from mental health problems have never been higher as well. So clearly this system is failing. And honestly, this is not surprising. This is an issue that I think affects many people. With over 20% of the population on these medications, everyone knows someone on them or has been on them themselves, and they know the drugs clearly cause tolerance. People get on them, they wear off in 6 months, the cycle repeats, you're essentially maxed out, and then eventually people say, I don't even know what the drug is doing anymore. Rather than looking at those issues, we stack more drugs on top of them. And so that's what's going on right in front of us. But I have some great news because the narrative is finally shifting. And this is not a partisan shift. This is something that is being picked up in the liberal media and also in the conservative media. Because in the past, if you ever spoke up about these issues, you were dismissed as essentially just being a dangerous person, scaring people away from life-saving medications. That is hardly the full truth on this. But since, recently we have seen, mainstream publishers pick up books like Laura Delano's book about her psychiatric misadventure. And we've also had many groups like, Wall Street Journal, New York Times covering the horrific problems that are happening to people when they come off these medications. They can actually cause a condition called protracted withdrawal, which is a type of neurological injury that can take years to go away. It is serious. And so here is what I want you to know about this, the mental health wing of Secretary Kennedy's agenda. So we are a deep network of advocates who have been working on this for years. We are well organized. We are plugged in with the MAHA Institute and also various groups within government like HHS, NIH, FDA, and SAMHSA. And we've hit the ground running. We've been doing this since February, since the MAHA Commission was established. And we are doing everything we can to take advantage of this opportunity to shape mental health policy in the US going forward. I'm a representative of that movement, but also my colleague Cooper Davis at the Inner Compass Initiative as well is really involved in this. And if anyone is interested in getting involved, I would recommend reaching out to me or Cooper because we want all the help that we can get. The second thing that I want to bring everyone's attention to on this call is that we have huge reach and huge influence right now. We've been able to work with some of our colleagues recently to mobilize millions of veterans to put forward a bill for signatory informed consent, essentially asking that veterans, before they get put on antidepressants and other psychiatric meds, actually need to be given a piece of paper where they can see the risks of these medications before agreeing to them. You wouldn't believe it that so many people are never even told about the risks of these medications, the difficulty coming off of them. And so we've been working with a large group of them to get that happening. And again, the people that care about this issue, they're not partisan. They don't line up with Trump or Bobby, but they line up with MAHA, and they want to get behind this mission right now. And so we are here, we're at the table, and we want to help, and we want to use our voices and all the people that care about this issue to help MAHA. So one thing that I want to leave you all with, and this is our big ask right now, with more and more people finding out about the risks of these medications, they are wanting to come off. This can be simple for some people, but for many people out there, it's actually incredibly difficult and it's dangerous. Like I mentioned before, if you come off these medications too quickly, one, you can get serious withdrawal, and you can think that you're trapped on the meds and you can never get off, and you essentially get stuck on meds that you don't want to be on. But the worst thing is you can get that condition called protracted withdrawal, which is like a neurological injury that can go on for a long time. And so in the notes that are going to go out afterwards, we've put together a post. It's on my X right now, Dr. Yosef, but it'll go out in the show notes, that we put together a post where we've created a directory. There's 3 different directories out there of all the mental health providers worldwide, it doesn't matter where you live, who know how to do safe drug tapering. We've also put together free resources for anyone who's considering coming off medications so they can come off safely. And so if you think that that your audiences and the people that you speak to would find this information helpful, I would really love it if you could share this with people. And on that note, I just want to say thank you so much for having me and letting us be a part of this important movement.
That's great. Thanks so much for coming on. And I mean, we all are detoxing from something, and it's really so important to know how to do it safely. Next up, we have Grant Cardone. Thanks so much for coming on and for waiting.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. And this has been great for me, Tony, to listen to. I want to thank Bobby Kennedy for making a commitment from his family to lead this movement, Dr. Oz. Guys, look, I'm a business person. Most people know me as a guy who wrote a book called The 10X Rule, and I own several businesses. But the truth is, what you don't know about me is my health has been the most important thing to me my entire life. My spiritual, mental, and emotional capacity and well-being is the most important thing. I cannot run a business if I'm not healthy. Bobby Kennedy said it best. A sick man only wants one thing. Only wants one thing. There are no dreams for a sick man, okay, or sick woman. You want one thing. You want to be healthy, so you can't dream. The cost of fixing our healthcare system in this country is the most expensive thing of any and everything this country does on a daily basis. If you're worried about inflation and you're worried about your future, worry about your health. Now, here's the deal. And the big ask that I have for this group is the facts. And if you leave with one thing today, understand the audience will listen to the facts, but they are not going to move because of the facts. People do not sell on facts. Okay. People move on movements. You need movement. You need mass numbers of people not delivering the facts, not saying how big pharma is and how contaminated the system is. Most of America would agree with that. Republican, Democrat, in between, white, brown, male, female, we agree that the system's broken, but it becomes overwhelming. What moves people is a movement. And what a movement is numbers, mass numbers of people. I have been fortunate enough to help people scale their businesses, their brands, make people famous, and scale businesses from just ideas. The way you do that is not with facts. You do it with numbers. So today I just posted on X, you probably can't see it because it's fuzzed out, but on my X, I support making America healthy again. At Robert Kennedy, I post his name and Dr. Oz. Okay, when the other side sees the numbers don't lie. And Trump knows this, by the way. Trump's one of the greatest promoters in the history of the world, and he knows numbers matter. The facts don't matter as much as the numbers do. So if you want to retaliate against big pharma, if you want to clean up the food system, if you want your healthcare costs to go down, if you're sick of your family being put on psychiatric drugs, I was, by the way, recommended psychiatric drugs 4 different times in my lifetime after a 10-minute interview. Because one, I got ADD, ADHD, I'm obsessive compulsive. And the last thing they said was I suffered from overachievement syndrome. And then my dreams were too big. Okay, this is insanity. But if you guys want to change it, you're not going to change it because you went to the psychiatric doctor and they put your kid on meds. You're going to change it because the numbers get so big. And if you deliver just the facts to people, it's going to stop them. So what you have to do is you got to get people curious. Dr. Oz talked about this. They need to be curious. Ask them, hey, what's wrong with our foods? What's wrong with our doctors? Don't tell them what's wrong. Ask them, and then send them links that they can agree with. Okay, everybody, I'm asking you to do one thing today. Go follow MAHA right now today on X. X is a great place to distribute content, probably the best place for medical information. Follow Robert Kennedy Jr. today and Dr. Oz. And if you guys want to bang on this one tweet that I just put out right now, when people see big numbers there, when they see numbers, they're like, what's happening over there? I want to be part of that. That works in the movie business, it works in music, and it will definitely work with MAHA. See you guys on the other side.
Thanks so much, Grant. We are getting a little bit long here, but we're going to go next to a pesticide discussion with 3 different speakers: Meryl Nass, Alexander Munoz, and Charles Eisenstein. So first up, we have Meryl Nass.
Thanks. Can we put my slides up? Uh-oh. So I talked a few weeks ago. Basically, Bayer bought Monsanto and was immediately stuck with an incredible amount of liability. It's already paid out $11 billion for jury verdicts against it, primarily because glyphosate has been judged to cause lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And Bayer stock price went down to 1/3 since it bought Monsanto. And so what it is doing now is trying to create laws in over 21 states, trying to create a federal law and asking the Supreme Court to judge on these cases. Next slide, please. This is the bill that Bayer has had introduced into the appropriations bill. It's only 9 lines long, and it's written in legalese, so most people don't understand it. And you have to actually go to an incredibly long bill, a law called FIFRA, which is the law that governs pesticides, to understand what it's about. But what it does is basically freezes the ability of the EPA and manufacturers to add warnings based on new scientific or medical information. And so it says basically that unless a multi-year process is gone through, which normally only happens every 15 years, you cannot update a label. And the way people have won these 67,000 cases against Bayer Monsanto is by saying the label failed to warn them what the risks were. Next slide, please. So this bill just takes away the funding for updating the label and prohibits label updates without a multi-year process. And therefore, companies would say, we weren't able to warn the public because we're prohibited by law. Next slide. But in order to pass this, which would give Bayer Monsanto and the entire rest of the pesticide industry, which is herbicides, fungicides, and insecticides, rodenticides, all of them, a liability shield, in order to do that, they have to lie about it. And so they've been lying a lot because this bill only helps the pesticide industry, doesn't help anybody else, and it would be good for all pesticides. So Bayer has created an organization of all the pesticide companies called the Modern Ag Alliance, and they are spreading essentially lies about what this bill would do and what the risks are to their industry. And so what they have said is that trial lawyers are working against farmers. Farmers won't be able to get their pesticides. Their profits will go down. The prices of food will rise, and pesticides will be taken off the table. They won't be able to have access to them. So they're trying to create a false narrative. Now, the fact that they have to create a false narrative in order to win means that we have power, and then if we actually tell the truth, we can beat them. They've lied about this even to their own members of Congress. So we had lots of people calling into Congress saying, we don't want a pesticide liability shield. And the congressman's office would say, oh, that's not what this bill is about. It's only about equalizing the rules on labels throughout the country, which is not true. And the Democrats pointed out that it wasn't true in Congress. Next slide. I'm just going to show you three slides of examples of the false narratives that Bayer Monsanto has been pushing. All right, this is the first one. Next slide. Yeah, consequences of inaction. So they're trying to get farmers to lobby Congress in favor of this bill on the assumption that they won't understand it. Next slide. And this is an article that was published in Missouri, written by this Modern Ag Alliance director, which again is full of lies. And here Bayer says your costs could rise, farmers' costs could rise by 150%. There's nothing in this bill about costs rising. The only thing that would raise their costs is Bayer itself. So we want you to spread the word and call your Congress members. We can't have this bill go forward. It's passed the Appropriations Committee. It goes to the House next. It is not part of the Senate bill, and we're hoping to get rid of it at the level of the House. If we can't, we may have to start calling senators and getting the leadership to try to take it out of the appropriations bill. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Meryl. Yeah, this is so critically important, and Monsanto and Bayer have been lying to the public for the last 20 or 30 years. So, you know, this is sort of the end of that, and they're trying to get a liability shield so that they won't have the incredible number of lawsuits that have to come at them, because, you know, we need this to stop. We need to stop them from poisoning the American public. Now we have Dr. Alexandra Munoz.
Thank you, Tony, and thanks, Meryl, for introducing all of that. I'm Dr. Alexandra Munoz. I'm a molecular toxicologist. I have a PhD in molecular toxicology and carcinogenesis, so I'm specialized in understanding the mechanisms by which toxins produce cancer and other diseases. And I've been fighting the pesticide immunity legislation at the state level this year and now at the federal level. And it's true that they have been running a huge campaign just based on a lot of lies, and they've been telling the same lies across all these different states, including the lie that glyphosate-based herbicides are totally safe. They are not. Glyphosate-based herbicides do cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I've personally reviewed the data to be able to testify to that fact. And the really terrible thing about this liability shield that they're trying to put forward is that it's not just about glyphosate and Bayer. This is about the entire chemical inventory that's regulated under FIFRA. And that includes over 1,200 active ingredients that are in over 57,000 products currently on the market in the US. And all of those products have relatively, I would say, bad regulation to begin with, because under FIFRA, companies submit their own data to the EPA so they can structure their studies in ways that avoid important toxicological tests. They often submit fraudulent data, and a lot of times they don't even submit all of the data that's required. And so these warning labels that they then also submit to the EPA often lack really important health warnings. And that's why all of these lawsuits exist. And that's why these companies are upset that they're getting sued, is because they're actually losing the lawsuits because there is scientific evidence to show that their products do cause cancer or that they do cause Parkinson's disease. And the warnings don't have those on the label. They don't have those warnings on the label. So when I first saw this legislation, it was incredibly concerning to me because of the type of chemicals that it regulates and how dangerous these chemicals are to begin with. These are designed to be toxins. They're designed to kill living organisms. And when you have something that's chemically potent like that, it's always going to impact other things. And that's what we see with this class of chemicals. It contains known carcinogens, known neurotoxins, and known endocrine disruptors, things that impact fertility and proper sexual development, and none of these things are on the warning labels. So when we think about suddenly, removing the last mechanism of accountability on this industry, which is what I would say this type of liability shield does, we are opening the door for even more dangerous chemicals to enter the market. things that can potentially impact the fertility of an entire generation. And that's what I'm particularly concerned about, is because so many of these chemicals are endocrine disruptors. They can interact with the hormone systems of babies while they're developing, of young children. Some things like glyphosate can have an androgenic effect on female development, so they can cause the masculinization of female sexual development in ways that can lead to things like polycystic ovarian syndrome or infertility later in life. These are potent chemicals, and the endocrine disruptor aspect isn't being regulated by the EPA at all. Their endocrine disruptor screening program is essentially existing, but not not being used. And so there's no warnings coming for those things. And now we've got an industry that's got enough they're willing to sell things that they know are dangerous without warnings. What are they going to sell next when they have no liability? And I think the answer is even more dangerous chemicals that will really harm people. So I think it's so important that everyone takes a moment to understand what this legislation is about and reach out to your legislator, reach out to your representative in the House of Representatives, because your voice really does matter. And I know it can feel like you're just shouting into the void sometimes, but I've been there in the legislators' offices in the states while people were calling, while they were receiving emails, and it has impact, especially when everybody does it at the same time. They have to notice and they have to listen. And that's how we're going to get through to them over the millions of dollars that they're spending lobbying against this type of legislation. So let's keep working together and stop this from passing.
Thanks so much. That was really great. And it's such an important issue and problem. And I'm just grateful for the work that you've been doing. And I'm sure all of us here are. So the final speaker is a visionary, an advocate, an incredible writer, Charles Eisenstein.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Tony, and really happy to be here with everybody, all the dedicated and brave people. That's one thing I love about MAHA people. Like, everybody has done something brave, sticking our necks out when we knew we could get canceled or have our careers destroyed. And it's kind of ironic almost that the media hit pieces that were referenced earlier, the narrative that they've tried to stir up is that we are a divided and divisive movement. That is only true if we make it true. We certainly have opportunities to be divided and divisive, but so far, I think we've actually been really united. And we're learning a little bit, we've been on the outside of the power structure for a long time, and now we've got one of our top leaders, and well, more than one actually now, in an official position. So instead of just being an outside critic, Bobby Kennedy actually has to deal with incredibly complex political realities. Sometimes he has to keep his head down. Sometimes he has to make compromises. Sometimes he has to keep his powder dry. He has to choose his battles. And so when we see that, it's important really to hold a generous attitude, because he's coming in with maybe 50, 60 political appointees into an organization that has 60 or 70,000 permanent staff. The Titanic does not get steered that quickly. A lot of the divisiveness can also be softened simply by how we approach our advocacy. So here, we have an amazing opportunity to speak, to talk, to call our congressional offices and to spread the word on social media. I was in a congressional office. I've been doing a little bit of lobbying, and I want to say, it's not a scary thing. Maybe the first time you do it is scary, but to call Congress people, you're going to be talking to an aide or a staffer, and their job is to be friendly to constituents. And if you're polite and friendly to them, you can often actually have a really enjoyable conversation. So I was in an office with Kelly Ryerson, actually, one of our movement. We were in an office and about the pesticide liability issue. And, he was coming back at us with all the stuff that Meryl was talking about. And in a way, it's true. We can't just ban pesticides overnight or ban glyphosate overnight, because the whole system has evolved around it. What we really want to do is to revolutionize American agriculture so that pesticides are no longer even needed, at least not in the quantities they are right now, so that farmers can be prosperous without destroying their own health and the health of consumers. And so Kelly told, we have all these arguments, but when Kelly told a story of her own loved ones getting lymphoma and dying from pesticides, it reached the staffer on a level that facts cannot reach. And it came from a place of, I know that you're a caring human being too. So I think that I really want to encourage people to make these calls and to be vocal on social media and to do it in this spirit of unity, that I know that you don't want pesticide residues in your food either. And I know that the transition might be difficult, but a pesticide liability shield, you speak to a farmer and you say, yeah, I understand that you are dependent right now on glyphosate and that we need a transition pathway and we need to reform the system of agricultural subsidies and incentives and the entire supply chain. But do you really want to be unable to sue companies that introduce products, maybe even knowingly, that can destroy your health? Do you want to not even have that right? So this division between MAHA and the farmers is another artificial division that we must reject and never approach any of these people who might have been manipulated by propaganda as irredeemable enemies. So this is what I want to ask of everybody as you take these actions to bring a unity spirit into your communications. And with that, we will be unstoppable because I can't remember who said it, but there is no constituency in America for pesticide residues in our food. So thank you, Tony.
Thanks so
Turn it
much,
back to you.
So we're just about at the end. I'm just going to give a couple of more statements. One of them is that I think that, one of the things that we just need to fight to the end are the liability shields. That we cannot have what happened with vaccines in 1986 happen with pesticides. We saw what happened then, that they were able to get a liability shield by telling Congress that vaccines were unavoidably unsafe, that they were going to harm millions and millions of people. But notwithstanding that, more people were going to die, maybe die in the streets, if we didn't have vaccines. So they got this liability shield, and we went from vaccines for 7 viruses to now having 73 vaccines in most states. And so these products that we were told were incredibly dangerous then just were amplified like crazy. And every American child just got more and more and more. So there's no reason to expect that these companies, that these corrupt companies that have been poisoning the American public are going to stop when they have a liability shield. So if you give them a liability shield, they're going to be more chemicals, more pesticides, and more poisoning of the American public. So we really need to fight that. So one other thing is that I would like everybody on this call, to the extent that they can, to post 15 to 30-second videos of things that they think are important to the MAHA movement, #MAHA Action. And we would like to get that to be sort of a national movement of people posting comments and videos. So please help us with that. Then also visit the MAHA Action website at mahaaction.com. Sign up to be a volunteer there. We need as many volunteers as we can possibly get. And then also subscribe to the MAHA report on Substack. Thanks so much, everybody. And we will be doing this every week going forward, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. And we hope that you'll all join, bring as many people as you can. We'd like to have 10,000 people or 20,000 people. This is a war and we need to win it. Thanks so much.
We will not comply with the instant institutions. Sick illusion, no, it won't be televised. Welcome to the revolution. We will not comply with the institutions. Sick illusion, no, it won't be televised. Welcome to the revolution.
I'm never going to forget the sacrifices you made because you love our country.